purposes, on a cost of $2.49 at 3.2%, that's roughly 7 cents for a carton of eggs, a dozen eggs. That's just 7 cents that's passed along to the consumer in terms of inflation. But to the working person making $7.65 an hour, that's roughly a 25-cent increase in their salary, far less than the 10 to 15 cents an hour that they're currently getting underneath the consumer price index increases under Missouri state law. We live in a consumer-driven, not business-driven economy. 70% of our country's economic output comes from when the average consumer is able to purchase goods and services. When those earning a wage are able to take care of themselves and their families, our economy does better. I know we have a little bit of a time crunch. I have a whole speech that's prepared. I'll save part of that for later when we get past some of the public testimony, because I do know a lot of folks have taken time out of their schedules to be here this morning. Board Bill 83 was drafted earlier this year with the intention of providing people the quality of life that they deserve if they are working 40 hours a week in this country and in this city. This board bill is the starting place for conversation. We have an opportunity as a city to reflect the values of the residents and companies that work here, do business here, and live here. Board Bill 83 first establishes a minimum wage starting as soon as the mayor signs the bill, well, shortly thereafter, of $10 and raises it incrementally over the next 5 years to $15 an hour by 2015. It provides exemptions for certain types of businesses and programs so that we can continue to support business growth in this city and also provide for reentry programs and other things of that nature. And at the same time, start the conversation around improving the quality of life for working Americans and working St. Louisans across the board. With that, I know that there's some other speakers that are here to testify in favor of the bill. I know there's a few that are here to testify in opposition to it as well. I look forward to those discussions. I look forward to working with everyone in regards to this bill. I've personally spent countless hours at this point in time, owners, small business owners, folks in the restaurant industry, folks in the healthcare industry, folks in the hospitality industry. Those sectors employ some of the largest numbers of employees that are paid at minimum wage. And so, I want to try and address their concerns as best as possible, but at the same time, we have got to do something to improve the quality of life for people so that they aren't working at poverty wages. This is a personal issue for me. I was the son of a single mother who had 2 children. My mother had multiple jobs throughout her life. And I personally also started working at a very young age to try and help my mother pay bills. I know what it's like to struggle to put food on the table and to try and improve your raised in a family that is constantly in a position to struggle. It is of the utmost importance that we provide workers who are picking themselves up every day, getting ready for work every day, and working 40 hours a week, and in some cases up to 60 to 80 hours a week, the opportunity to support themselves and to support their families so that their children also have an opportunity to succeed in life, to be able to go to school, to not worry about where the food in the next meal is going to come from, to not have to worry about whether or not they're going to be able to support themselves once they graduate high school, or even if they're able to graduate high school. Oftentimes during this debate, and in the last few weeks, I've been constantly reminded, about folks in the fast food industry who don't deserve $15 an hour, who don't deserve to make what is considered a minimum wage to support themselves because they flip burgers. If you look at where minimum wage was at its highest earning potential in the late 1960s, most Americans at that point in time were also considered unskilled workers who did not need a high school or college diploma to enter into the workforce at that point in time. You would be able to go to a factory down the street and be able to get employment there back in the 1960s and before. So the arguments that are being put forth today, I'd like to have some historical context around them as well. This is not a new argument. You know, there's plenty of fear tactics that are being spread about raising the minimum wage is going to increase inflation, raising the minimum wage is going to increase unemployment, raising the minimum wage is going to continue to put people out of business. The simple fact remains, over the last 77 years that the minimum wage has been in place, we've seen standard increases in inflation. We've seen boom and bust cycles of what people consider prosperity, but oftentimes end up as poverty for many working Americans. The time is now to discuss this issue. I'm willing to consider, working with as many people as possible and hearing their concerns. But with that, I would like to introduce one of the adjunct professors from WashU, Jason Purnell, to speak about the impacts of poverty on children and families. And then there's one other speaker after that that I'd like to introduce. Take your lead, Mr. Chair.
I have Jason Purnell first. So that I cannot pronounce the last name.
Correct.
The first two speakers for and then we will move to Mitch Wax and John Chen. Again, it's not an alternate.
I appreciate that.
Okay, Mr. Jason Purnell. And if you can give us your name and address, we would appreciate that.
My name is Jason Purnell. I'm an assistant professor at the Brown School at Washington University. The address is 1421 Dogtown. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You all have copies of my testimony.
Yes. This will be the.
It'll have a green graphic on it on the front.
Okay. We've got it.
Great. So I appreciate the opportunity to testify regarding the important issue of living wages for the St. Louis community. Mine is perhaps a unique perspective on this issue, as my background is in public health rather than business, labor, or economics. I've been leading a project called For the Sake of All for more than 2 years now, and we've been looking at the intersections of health with economic, educational, and neighborhood factors. In a report published just over a year ago, we noted an 18-year gap in life expectancy at birth between two zip codes in our region, 63106 in the Jeff Vanderloo neighborhood of the city, and 63105 in the Clayton area in St. Louis County. This is a geography separated by less than 10 miles. In a more recent publication on creating economic opportunity for low to moderate income families in St. Louis, we estimate that 556 of the almost 12,000 deaths in the city of St. Louis and St. Louis County combined in 2012 were attributable to poverty. Another 555 deaths were attributable to having less than high school education. That is nearly 1 in every 10 deaths, or enough lives to fill 15 Metrolink cars. And the estimated economic impact of this loss of life is $7.8 billion. We've known for some time about the strong and consistent link between income and health in the field of public health. The relationship is so consistent that we have a name for it, the gradient. The gradient describes how health improves as income, education, wealth, and other social and economic factors improve. A brief example of the gradient in the St. Louis metropolitan area comes from the 2011 county level study, which shows that 37% of those with income at less than $15,000 rated their health as fair or poor, compared to 29% of those making between $15,000 and $25,000, 18% of those making between $25,000 and $35,000, 14% of those making $35,000 to $50,000, 8% of those making $50,000 to $75,000, and only 4% of those making $75,000 or higher. In other words, fewer people are in poor health as income increases. We also know that poverty has a particularly detrimental impact on health, and that poverty in childhood has effects well into adulthood. Because income and poverty are so important to health outcomes, wages that support families are crucial to public health. Some researchers look specifically at the potential health impacts of increases in the minimum wage. For example, when San Francisco raised its minimum wage to $11 per hour, researchers estimated that there would be a 4 to 6% reduction in the risk of premature death among low-income adults, as well as modest improvements in sick days, depression, and individuals' own reports of their health status. Estimates also show that the children of workers benefiting from the wage increase in San Francisco would also increase their odds of completing high school by 34% and reduce their risk of childbirth outside of marriage by 22%. Another analysis for the state of California estimated that nearly 400 deaths would be prevented each year among lower-income Californians as a result of a proposal to raise the minimum wage to $13 per hour by 2017. Much of the debate about the minimum wage centers on its impact on businesses and the economy more broadly, and that is entirely appropriate. But the health impacts of rising wages should not be ignored. This is especially true given the outsized investment made by government and individuals in healthcare. Families who are able to provide for their needs through living wages are families that avoid costly and debilitating disease, disability, and untimely death. They also set their children up for future success through the completion of school and their own entrance into the workforce. And we know that young people who complete more education also live in better health as adults. A livable wage is not only an economic intervention, it is a powerful health intervention. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Brown? Mr. Brown? Patrick? Turn on to your next speaker. The next speaker is coming to us via Skype. While they're doing that, is the license collector in Wisconsin in the room still? We have 3 bills that here for her today, too. Is the clerk still? Let's move the license collector's bills to Thursday. Extend my apologies. I thought I saw it.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Say hello again.
Hi, this is Vivian from the National Employment Law Project.
All right, can you turn that up a little bit more? We would appreciate that.
Today, I'm Flossie from the National Employment Law Project.
All right, today, could you see who you work for or where you live, and just tell us where you're coming from, and then let us know what you'd like us to know today.
Great. I didn't quite catch that, but I think everybody knows.
Yes.
We are here today. You're just not coming.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. Thank you so much for setting the bill for the testify remotely. My name is Vivian Senior Tax Attorney at the National Employment Law Project. We're a nonprofit organization is sitting around the country on minimum wage and other labor market policies that we have in the last decade. Work with most of the young cities that are adopted. So we're pretty familiar with economic experiences of those cities as well as economic literature on the subject. So I'm here to testify in favor of today's consumer students. I want a bit of background about their experiences and cities all as commercial this is also counted.
Today,
Yes.
I tell you what, we're gonna, get a hold of you by speakerphone because we're having a hard time understanding you. And, we're gonna put you on speaker so we get a good audio feed on you. If you can, just bear with us for a minute or two. I've got all these young people here and they're holding their phones, so somebody will figure out how to get that done for me in the next couple of moments.
Thank you.
They should be calling me.
Hi, I'm Is this another audience?
I believe it is.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So I just want to start thank everybody for figuring out a way to help me justify it. I really appreciate it. My name is Vinay Salati. I'm an attorney at the National Employment Law Project. We are a national nonprofit that has worked with cities and states around the country on minimum wage and other labor market policies, and specifically have worked with most of the U.S. cities that have passed minimum wages over the last decade and a half. So I'm going to testify in favor of today's proposed ordinance, and also, and as my written testimony goes into much greater detail, talk about some of the economic literature and real world experiences around minimum wage, and just more generally take a step back and, talk about why this team and why it's so important to raise the wage floor in St. Louis. So I just want to start, we're in a moment where more and more U.S. cities are taking steps to raise their minimum wages following on failed mistakes. We've seen cities across the country face the minimum wage increases up to $15 an hour, and combined with that, we are seeing a real rapid economic literature showing that impact of minimum wages is that they raise worker earnings, negligible efforts impact on employment levels, and as more and more U.S. cities have started to enact local minimum wages, we're seeing the same thing. Especially for some of these cities have enacted local minimum wages that are significantly higher than the states. They have been focused, focus upon research, and they have done for a variety of reasons that I'll talk about in a minute. But there's no impact on job loss and tremendous positive impacts on workers and local businesses. I think the other thing that I wanted to point out is low-paying industries in St. Louis and Missouri across our country are disproportionately fueling job growth today, and more adults are spending their careers in the low-wage sector industries that are the ones that are growing. So raising the wage floor, which has badly eroded over time, by any measure, by any comparison, it is far below its historic value. It's a critical way to boost incomes for the growing number of families that are relying on minimum and low wage jobs to make ends meet. And it's particularly important even as our wage floor has fallen. Corporate profits that income inequality is the new speaker mentioned has only gone up. So first, just on the research. There's much more detail in my written testimony, but basically there's been a long, there's a shift in how people think about minimum wage today. The most rigorous economic research over the past 20 years has no impact on job loss. One of the seminal studies on this came out a couple of years ago that looked at every pair of counties that straddle the state border where you have a different minimum wage, because the states had different minimum wages at any time between 1990 and 2006. So these researchers analyzed close to 250 pair of counties and found that in every single comparison, there was no evidence of job loss in the county that had a higher minimum wage. There was no evidence of jobs or businesses picking up and moving across the border for whatever reasons I can explain. And so they found that really, the myth or
We'll say, oh, well, it's just going to kill jobs, it's going to move across the border, just didn't pan out. And so, combined with that, there have been studies looking specifically at what happens when cities raise their minimum wages. Today there are about 22 cities and counties that have raised their minimum wages. The very first two to do it were San Francisco, California, and Santa Fe, New Mexico. So there were studies that looked at both of these cities, and those cities have much higher minimum wages than their states. So in Santa Fe, the city raises minimum wage 65% above the state rate. And there's a well-regarded study that compared job growth in Santa Fe with job growth in Albuquerque, which at that time did not have a higher minimum wage, and found no discernible impact on employment. There's a study that looked at San Francisco, which by 2014, given that San Francisco also had paid leave and other employer mandates, had a wage or employment cost that was 80% above the level of the federal minimum wage, and again found no evidence of job loss. And that's borne out by real-world data, quotes from employers that, once minimum wage increases have been gradually phased in, I said, you know what, this is not that bad, we managed to adjust. And so, I can, there's much more detail in the testimony, and I'm happy to answer specific questions on those studies. I just wanted to also note that, and this goes a little bit towards the question of why 15, as the previous speaker mentioned, these higher incomes that result from minimum wage increases have direct and tangible impacts on the lives of workers affected and their families. Accepted wages are falling. They're actually falling pretty dramatically. They're falling for most of the labor force, which across all occupations. Hourly wages have declined by 3.5% from 2009 to 2013. Once you account for inflation, lower wage occupations have experienced even greater declines. And then combined with that, we have the fact that, the industry and sector where we're seeing most of these larger declines happen to be the ones that are growing faster. And so, the value of a higher city minimum wage, especially given that, housing, food, transportation, every other cost only go up. The value of a higher minimum wage is that it provides families that are, in these jobs, the ability to deal with higher living costs. And I would say, we are talking about a very adult workforce and one that is supporting families. There was an analysis that my organization did with the Economic Policy Institute that looked at the impact of the federal minimum wage proposal and found that 88% of workers who stand to benefit from that proposal are over the age of 20, and that 45% have at least some college experience, which really reflects the fact that the average low wage worker today is both older and has more education than the average low wage worker was in the past. And just finally, because I know that my time is running short, I just wanted to, by any measure, $7.65 an hour, which translates to an annual income of just over $15,000 a year, assuming a 40-hour work week, is just not enough to live on. It is so far below, by any measure, whether you look at worker productivity, purchasing power, comparative to median or average wages, living costs. $7.65 is just well below any of those measures. And so when we talk about $15 an hour, we're talking about a phased increase over over several years to $15 an hour, which will, better approximate, for example, where the minimum wage was when it was at its historic high in terms of purchasing power, or where it was when it was at its historic high in terms of percentage of average or median wage, or what it actually costs to live on. So the National Low Income Housing Coalition said that the hourly wage required for a two-bedroom apartment in St. Louis is $15.69. That the living wage calculation for St. Louis for an adult with one child, the living wage is $20.51. For an adult with two kids, it's $24.23. So, we're talking about a wage that is still going to be $30,000 a year, full-time work. That's what $15 translates into. And so that is not that is just a much more realistic approximation of what it takes to live on and comparison to our past indicators on minimum wage. So with that, I'll just stop. I think my time is up, and answer any questions or.
All right, today, give me a hand second here. Can you hear me today?
I can. I might need Richard or somebody to translate it. So.
Leave it there. Don't leave it on. Does anybody have any overriding questions at this time? Alderman Vaccaro.
I don't remember what the rest of the position was talking. I noticed some of these were ballot initiatives and some of them passed. And some of them at $15 an hour. Most of that seems to be in California. And I guess I've been asked by a lot of people, how does that $15 an hour in California spending wise amount to $15 a year?
So the question is, how does $15 an hour in California relate to cost of living? But let's do one question at a time. Can you give me any light on that?
Sure. So I think, this is, so the cost of living, so I guess in Los Angeles and the city that recently passed the living wage, yes, the cost of living in Los Angeles is higher than it is in St. Louis, but if you look at other indicators, if you look at the median wages, for example, Los Angeles and St. Louis are actually pretty parallel. If you look at what what purchasing power is, apart from rent or things like that, it's pretty similar. I mean, $15 in Los Angeles, $30,000 a year in Los Angeles is not getting far. I think that it's an approximation of what the demand was and what the council ended up passing. But I think it's more important to just look at what does $50 an hour or $30,000 a year by 2020. And I just want to stress again that we're talking about giving the minimum wage increase over the years. What does that mean in terms of living and being able to afford things and being able to contribute to local businesses, but actually having money to spend? What does that mean for residents and communities in St. Louis?
The others, I noticed that Chicago went to 13. Now, let me tell you, I'm in support of hearing a bigger minimum wage, but it also got calls in both directions.
The question is always,
Well, I guess what I'm asking are really not is the cost of an apartment in Chicago, the cost of an apartment in Los Angeles versus the cost of an apartment in the city. I guess I'm trying to listen to all sides and then where this number can accept. I'm hearing from some people this would be a kind of negative impact for citizens who are concerned about this being inflationary. Keeping in mind that I'm supporting this, that's not my question. The cost of the apartment in the city of Chicago, Los Angeles versus St. Louis, if you've researched that.
today, the question is, what is the cost of housing in LA and Chicago versus St. Louis? Question.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm happy to do a comparison and get to the relevant people that can then compare to the council.
All right, and so send that to Mr. Joe Vaccaro, and your people here will take care of that for us.
Okay.
Thank you. It does not appear to be any other questions at this time.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Mitch Wax. Mitch, if you could give us your full name and address, we would appreciate that.
Full name is Mitch Wax. Address is 1924 Marconi Avenue on the Hill.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Chairman and council people. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. My name is Mitch Wax. I'm the owner of Cooperative Home Care. We are a home health care agency located in the city of St. Louis. We've been in business for 28 years on the Hill, a proud member of the city. And what we do every day is we take care of the city's poorest senior citizens and the city's poorest people with disabilities. We provide in-home care to those residents in the city who are indigent, who cannot care for themselves. And we've been doing it for 28 years. We employ approximately 500 people. In addition to that, we have approximately 50 non-direct caregiver jobs that include case managers, quality assurance, medical directors, all the things that it takes to run a home health care business. And we've been doing so since 1985. I'm going to talk to you today about what I feel the impact is on my personal business. I'm not going to talk about giant national statistics. I'm not going to talk about platitudes and flag raising, but the impact on me as an employee and my company. I am reimbursed by the state legislature an arbitrary amount that they select every year. It's currently $15.56 an hour. That's what they reimburse me. I cannot raise the price. I cannot lower the price. I'm told this is what I have to pay, or this is what I'm reimbursed. From that, I have a whole business to run. I have City of St. Louis business licensure taxes. I have the 1% employment tax. I have the personal property tax. It goes on and on. You guys know all these things that I pay. This particular bill would shut our doors. And I don't mean to scare you. I'm not here to use scare tactics. I know people say, oh, it's not true, they're using scare tactics. Well, it's not. It's simple math. If I just add FUTA and SUTA at $15, now that is $16.17 before my even mandated workers' comp and professional liability. Now I'm at $17. At $17 being reimbursed $15, well, you do the math, I'm out of business. There's nothing fancy here. There's no weird economics. It's just simple mathematics. We cannot sustain a 100% increase in the minimum wage. We operate on a 3 to 5% business margin, and that's pretty normal in our industry, and it's okay. But if you double my wages for my entry-level employees, I cannot get to zero. My doors shut. Now, they don't technically shut, because what I'll have to do is move out of the city and pray that the state doesn't pass this as well. Now, why do you need us, and why do you care? Find out. I'm just one business. Well, I'm not just one. I get the same exact reimbursement as every other in-home agency does in the whole state of Missouri. So every other one, probably 200 of them located in the city of St. Louis, will also have the same exact economics. And these aren't voodoo numbers. I get $15.56 an hour from the state of Missouri, and they are not getting me a rate increase just because you want to double my wages. As a matter of fact, if any of you paid attention this year, the state budget came out with a 6% reduction in the programs that fund us. And you're not against. So 6% reduction, not an increase. So I'm going to have to tighten my belt even more from that 3 to 5% profit margin. Now, why do you need us? Well, because we take care of your mothers and your fathers and your grandparents and your grand uncles and nieces, and we do it for the Medicaid population. We do it for the indigent people. I don't do it for the wealthy people who live in 63105. I do it for the people who live here. And we do it proudly. And we take care of the people with disabilities. Now, If the economics forces out of business, well, you can start caring for your mom, and I applaud that. Or you can send her to an institution. Or what about the 25-year-old with a disability? Where do they go? Well, you can send them to a nursing home, and that's a long lifespan of 25 to 70. Again, these aren't stereotypes. This is just simple reality of my world. No one else's. I'm only speaking for me. Home care, we know, is 1/5 of the cost of nursing homes. Now, that's not the number I made up. That was done by a Senate study here in the state of Missouri by the Senate themselves. It's a very efficient program, Chairman. We get 60% of the funding from the state budget, and 40% we pull down from the federal government to match. So it costs us not very much to take care of our seniors and our people with disabilities. And we do it very efficiently at 1/5 the cost of a nursing home. I will tell you that if I have to leave out, and all the other like-minded competitors of mine have to leave because of this economic reality, then you're putting at risk these seniors who may get cared from their kids. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll end up in a nursing home, or maybe they'll just get shut in and say, never mind, leave me alone, I'm not going to a nursing home. And then they put themselves at great risk of harm, trying to live on their own independently. Many of them just can't do it. So I would be forced to move my business to the county. I will point out, my son is 17 years old. He's looking for his first job this summer. If you knew my son, and I don't mean any disrespect to my boy, he's not worth $32,000. No employer is going to get that value out of him, and that's the annualized wage of $50. I mean, it was not designed to be a living wage. You're right, you cannot support a family of 4 on $7.65. I get that. But minimum wage just was designed to be a starting wage. So my son could go out and learn, soft skills that he needs to move his way up the ladder and get his next job. If you're still living at 17 years old, that's a fair wage. Now, if you're 40 years old and still living there, that's not the wage's fault. The other issue that I have is the wage inflation. You don't only affect this with this bill, the minimum wage. Let me give you some examples of how it works in my company only. If you raise the wage for a person who has no experience to walk in to $15, now my CNA says to me, wait, I'm only getting paid $12. You need to pay me $17. My LPN says, wait, you're paying the CNA $17, well, you have to pay me $25 now. My nurses will say, you can't pay them $25 unless you're paying me $40 an hour. I cannot pay the person with 0 skills who walks in and no training that wage without moving everybody else up the ladder to a much higher, unsustainable wage. Now, I speak for myself because some agencies may be able to do this, not home health agencies, but some businesses by raising the price of their products. As I remind you, I am not allowed to raise the price of my product by state mandate. But what I do see is other industries saying, we'll get more efficient. We will replace people with kiosks or computers. We saw that with Southwest Airlines. Those unions pushed that industry. You now walk up to Southwest Airlines, and instead of a friendly human being, you punch in your stuff, you slide your card, and they got a kiosk. There's a kiosk now replacing in the city at a human being at the subway. The drive-through is a kiosk, boom, 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 job is gone. So these aren't scare tactics about larger companies doing things like this. I can't do that because I can't put a computer in your grandmother's house. I still have to have a human. So I can't use technology to offset this cost. I believe you will see, without a scare tactic again, you will see a lot of home health agencies being forced to move out of the city of St. Louis. I will close with saying I'm really on behalf of the 500 people that I employ, and probably close to 1,000 residents, the city people who are indigent, who are getting in-home health care. If you cannot either make an exception and carve out an industry like mine that is funded by Medicaid and Medicare, so that we don't have to shut our doors, I can't support this, and I'd ask you not to support this. Unless the city has it in its budget to say we'll make up the difference to you. In other words, if the federal government, if the state legislature is going to pay you $15.56 an hour, and we raise you, then the city will reimburse me the difference in that wage, and then I'd be able to stay, and I'd be happy to stay. I wouldn't be happy because the wage inflation issue and compression issue still exists. We did talk about that. So it affects me on so many levels that even if you couldn't pay me, I couldn't keep those doors open, especially with the federal pressure of the Healthcare Act that was passed, that's pushing healthcare costs to companies like mine, and the budget cuts that we're seeing. We just can't afford that. So I'd ask you not to support this bill as it's written today, as it stands. If nothing else, just speak for the seniors and the people with disabilities who are receiving care. Thank you.
1 second. Remember, we're asking questions. All right, tomorrow.
Ask a couple of questions.
Please.
And the average age of your worker?
The average age, the starting average age of our worker is probably in the early 20s. That's not a number that I calculate, but I would say anecdotally early 20s.
The average age of your workers overall, you're saying,
Yeah.
You're saying that the $7 or whatever, when you talk about your son, that it seems that people in your employment are much older.
Well, not much older. The state of Missouri has requirements. You have to be 18 years old to work in home care. I cannot hire you at 17. So we do have a lot of people coming in out of high school with no skills, no training, and I have to do all of that. I have to invest tons of time and money. It takes me about 2 years to get an aide from start to finish to be a great aide.
And I believe minimum wage should go. I just don't know what that number is, but, you know, it seems to me you probably
Some years I make zero. That's the risk of being and benefit of being a business owner. I can show you years where we've made no money and lost money. But that's the risk I take. Absolutely, sir. What's your point?
Well, I mean, I own my own business, I get it. There's up and down, there's some people who didn't make anything.
Well, good for you. Congratulations.
So, excuse me, 1 second. All the questions start with who, what, where, when, and why.
So anyway. Yeah, I get it.
We have other speakers that want to speak. We'll come back to you all in front.
Thanks. And so, you pay your workers what?
Depends on their skill level. So we have everything from RNs, occupational therapists, OTAs, PTAs, all the way down to an unskilled person who starts at $8 an hour.
Okay, yeah, because I'm reading that you said that it was a reduction in the reimbursement rate and what the state legislature allocated for
For
this year.
2016.
Oh, okay,
The next
2016, okay.
The session just closed, Alderman, in May, as they always do, and for the new budget, there's a 6% reduction. In the last 4 years, we have seen a 7% increase. That's cumulative for 4 years, 7% on our rate, not 100%. They're now, the state is running out of funds and they're cutting. I'm sure you've seen that.
Right, yeah, I'm a pass, well, I'm a former.
East Side Representative Jefferson.
Right.
Oh, my God, you know all this.
Yeah, and so, what I read here says that you get, 15.56 an hour.
Correct.
From the state Medicaid, program.
Correct.
And, you usually keep about $6.96 of that 45%,
No,
something less.
no, 3 to 5% are bottom line, and I'll be happy to meet with you individually and show you our books. We're audited as mandated by the state of Missouri. We pay for that audit, about $25,000 a year. That's public record. So whatever you hear from the unions, not true. You can go look at our audit.
I'm just reading this.
Yeah.
From the post.
Yeah, well, I don't know where the Post gets their information. You can look at my audit.
Okay,
I will give that to you.
all right, that's good, thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Carter, you have a question?
My understanding is how you started this thing with, you said you moved the county, where you, if they also do this.
Well, we'd have to lobby to try to see if we could get our industry exempted. In other words, or find a way for the state to say, sure, we'll pay you, we'll double the reimbursement rate for in-home care because we're going to double your wages.
Thank you. All right.
How many employees do you currently have?
About 500, sir.
How many make the current minimum wage?
None of them make the current minimum wage. They're all above it.
What is the lowest that one of your employees pays?
I think right now, $8 an hour. That's for somebody with no skills, no training, no education.
Alderman
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you're suggesting what?
Well, I'm suggesting a couple of things. I'm suggesting that even a compromise shuts my doors just because I'm unique. I understand I do not speak for every business in the city. They can go out and raise their prices for their goods. They can, raise the price of a gallon of paint. I just cannot do that. I'm capped by Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement rates. So I only speak for my industry. But unfortunately, it's an industry that's been targeted by this union. And so my suggestion is carve an exemption out for industries that cannot play on the same playing field as everybody else in the city. In other words, if we cannot raise our prices that they're set by the state legislature arbitrarily, carve us out of this bill.
And do you have in your industry and or in your particular business a graduated increase as the skill levels of your workers?
Oh yeah, of course, otherwise they wouldn't be able to retain them.
So does that go with the years of service in, or do you pay for their training someplace else?
We actually do pay for, we pay for training, and then when they get training, they get a raise. So in other words, a more educated aide is more valuable to me and is more valuable to your mother or father, whoever they're taking care of, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chen. And after Mr. Chen will be Ruth Ersman. Mr. Chen.
Thank you, Mr. Chen. Members of the committee, my name is John Chen. I'm here speaking on behalf of myself, my business partner, and my wife, Kaya Ophiro. I'm at 3301 Merrimack Street in the 25th Ward. It should be pointed out, we're a longtime supporter and friend of Alderman Cohen. But we're here to express our strong opposition to bill number 80. Even though we agree and support the spirit of the bill, we have concluded that this is a well-meaning but misguided, shortcut approach to address a very deep social problem at the expense of small businesses and nonprofit organizations in the city. If you push this forward without attaching any plans and conditions, it will erode and undermine the real work on the two most effective pathways out of poverty. That's education and jobs. We believe there will be significant unintended consequences, negative consequences on both fronts. we're qualified to speak on this subject as a social entrepreneur who has selflessly and tirelessly worked and at a great personal financial expense to revitalize the South City neighborhood for the last 10 years. As proponents for small businesses, having started and run a number of businesses, but more specifically recently, our own cafe here in Dutchtown, again, in 2015. I also speak as a management engineering consultant to major hospitals both locally and nationally, and as a managing partner of a technology firm. On education, number one, what incentive is there for our young students in the city to pursue higher education if they are guaranteed to be paid $15 an hour, and no matter what job they start out? In fact, why even go to school in the first place? Number two, it's a fact that currently many high-paying STEM jobs, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, position are unfilled, and we have a shortage of healthcare workers in this region, in our region, and in the country, especially for nurses, pharmacists, primary care and emergency medicine physicians. What incentive are we creating for our children and their family in the city to pursue a career that will truly create upward mobility, move into the middle class? I will challenge all sides. I don't know. These are the questions worth asking. But I will challenge all sides of the debate to study and provide data on how this $15 minimum wage will impact our education, graduation rate, college rate, and so on. On job. Plenty has been said, but there are some insights. The following are the insights from our personal experience and conversation with many knowledgeable, educated, and rational thinking voters, especially in the 25th. Number one, small businesses in hospitality, retail, and service sectors will be devastated by this bill. Not because we don't support the spirit of the bill, but we see no realistic, practical way to retool and redesign our businesses to survive in this kind of unbalanced wage environment. As socially responsible business owners, in the last 7 years, Kai and I have sacrificed paying ourselves a salary so we can pay our staff at a higher starting rate than minimum wage. Currently, it is $9 an hour to start. Not because we don't want to pay ourselves salary, because we can't. That's despite the vast majority of our waking hours each week being spent on this cafe business. Number two, a friend of mine who's a longtime observer with a personal connection to many small immigrant businesses in the city said in order for them to survive, to stay open, they will have no choice but hire people under the table and throw money from it. I didn't see it at first, but I actually agree with him. Number three, this bill will ultimately strengthen large corporations because A, they have deep pockets, resources, and know-how to sustain and make it work, i.e., more outsourcing, more technology, and so on. B, they will have less competition from a weakening regional small business sector. C, they will have an even easier time to hire away quality, educated employees who would otherwise work in the small business and nonprofits in the city, due to the wage disparity created by the small business exemption in the bill. The small business exemption, however well-intended, this is number 4, my number 4 point. However well-intended, will make it extra hard for our small businesses, nonprofits, to attract and retain quality, educated employees. Keep in mind, we already have a very difficult time to compete with larger firms to attract, retain quality employees as we stand now. Number 5, a minimum wage bill without any counterbalancing plan or policy condition attached to it to protect small, medium-sized business and nonprofit is amazingly, to me, similar to a free trade agreement without a plan to protect jobs, a social safety net, and the environment. As we know, unfair free trade policies has been a major factor behind the income inequality in this country today, because it has created prosperity, mostly for those on the top. Number 6, suggestions for the plans and policy as we see some of the suggestions to attach to this kind of minimum wage bill include tax incentives for both the small business and employee who work for, and tax reduction for small businesses, wage subsidize, ongoing support for small businesses, and training, small business loans, job trainings, and so on, infrastructure investment to stimulate growth and encourage more people to start business on their own, and make our city government operate more effectively and more efficiently. This is just a few examples. There's no easy way, no shortcut to reduce income inequality in our country. We have to be willing to do the hard work at all levels, including our governments, all political parties, and our elected officials and representatives. And not just proposing a bill based on emotional reaction just to get the ball rolling, with the consequences of letting small business nonprofit sink or swim. In conclusion, we do not support Bill number 83 as it stands, including the language of a perpetual increase over $15 after 2020, no ceiling. As we would only support minimum wage bill, which would also attach conditions and policies for enhancing education and strengthening jobs. This ill-conceived and short-sighted bill would distract us from the real work to invest in our neighborhoods, to create true capacity for a thriving local economy and prosperity for all. Finally, my humble opinion, it's irrational and unethical to push a policy that will ultimately make big corporations even more powerful and force small, medium-sized businesses, nonprofit, to bear the burden of this shortcut approach to income inequality in our society. One more word. All the data, evidence support presented so far, I have not seen the impact, the actual real data impact on small businesses, nonprofit, and on education. I challenge all sides to study and come up with data and evidence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, so much. I didn't look down your way. Mr. Chen, could you answer a question or two?
How many employees do you have?
We have anywhere from 10 to 20 depending on the season. This is, we talk about the restaurant cafe.
Okay.
Their starting rate is $9. And like I said, retention is the highest priority for us. We want to retain the quality educated employees. This is why we started 2 years ago, $9 an hour starting rate, after successful completion of their training, which lasts about 30 days.
So if you had to pay your employees $15 an hour, what is the practical effect? Would you be able to do that? Would you have less employees? Would you do that?
There's no way we can do it. I would love to do it. I told my employees that I would love to pay them the rate my consulting company is paying me, but I just, for service sector, for hospitality job, either we have to increase revenue dramatically, and the cost is really, it's just the food cost and the labor cost is labor cost is a major expense.
So in practical terms, what would you do? Would you have to raise your prices?
We don't know. This is why I'm asking for all parties in this debate, come up with solutions, attach those conditions to help small business to survive, retool, and redesign. I have no answer.
Alderwoman.
Mr. Chen, I first want to acknowledge your business. It's a fantastic one, and the work you've done to ignite that business. Mr. Fitness, again, is fantastic. I appreciate your.
We're only asking questions.
So, can you support a smaller increase? Would you be able to, as you mentioned, you pay people starting at $9 an hour, would you be able to support an increase that looks different?
We will support any increase with the conditions and policy attached to it. That means the government and all sectors of the society need to do the hard work, invest in the small business, invest in small businesses. Meaning that we need to see resources and trainings and tax reduction, some kind of a burden, something has to go. Something has to be, continue to be, cannot be just another on top of what we have currently.
Thank you so much. And that brings us to 10:13. I am going to ask the clerk to keep the sign-up list so that the next time we meet, we will continue with the current list that we have here. Thursday, this committee has the budget is coming back to us from the Board of Estimate and Apportionment. I've asked the license collector to take her bills to Thursday. So those will be we'll be doing the budget, so we can get it to the Board of Aldermen, so we'll get it hopefully passed before the end of the fiscal year, June 30th. On Thursday, we'll ask Mr. Cohn or Alderman Cohn to come and work out a schedule with us for the future meetings. So he'll come to the meeting at the end of the meeting. So it starts at 8:30. We're going to go through that budget fast. We've already approved the vast majority of it. And the license collector bills will take some time. So by about 9:15 or 9:30 on Thursday, we'll work out a schedule among the members here. If anybody wants to offer an evening site in their ward, we'd like to Alderman Caparo know, so that it's important to the members on Thursday to have meetings out in the community. Offer up those sites to Alderman Caparo. I thank everybody for coming out today. When we next meet, again, we're going to keep it moving so that everybody can speak. I know that I'm hard on some of my committee members, but if I let them go, we might only get one speaker a meeting. So we will let you know in plenty of time. Hopefully by Thursday they have a schedule on this agreed to. Thank you so much for coming out today. Meeting adjourned.